Go.
Uh-oh.
Hey, what's up, my brother? How are you, Adam?
Pretty good, Craig. How's it going?
Good, man. It's good to finally hook up with you. So we saw you this last Saturday, back to like just kicking ass. How you feeling after that tournament?
Kind of beat up, pretty beat up. I actually didn't plan on going. And and the whole team ended up coming down. I think they were going to go to Tennessee, but then something happened and it was Florida instead. And I was like, you know what? I'll go down and see what I can do. And so I was training up to that. I didn't take any rest time. And then, the tournament, and I feel a little bit beat up, but not too bad.
Do you take some time off, like if you're peaking for an event?
Yeah, here, I'll tell you what. Can you hold on 1 second? I got somebody at the door,
dude.
actually. All right, I'm going in.
Yeah, man.
I'm sorry, Craig. I
you're
had somebody
good.
at the door, man. I was like, what? Is it somebody knocking at my door? But yeah, I use it. So I think, were you asking me if I take some time off?
Yeah,
or
like
something,
do you, for an event, if you're really peaking for something, do you kind of deload from your training, or are you a guy that just takes time off completely?
So yeah, I think I have it down, but it always changes. So I mean, I used to take some time off, and then I realized that I didn't feel as strong going into events, whenever I took just, I guess, complete rest is what you would call it. So it's more of a deload. I would say a week to a week and a half out. Well, as far as practice goes, I definitely take a week off. I practice weekly. I will not practice the weekend before. And then, yeah, it definitely goes into a lighter, probably 30%, and I don't do so much volume, but I like to up the speed. I like to up the speed, sharp, crisp movements. I really won't train full range. I like to do a lot of half range or even quarter range, but keep it sharp, keep it crisp, and get myself ready for, what I'm about to do on the table, which is, again, we how we are, short range of motion, fast, quick muscle fibers. So I try to get those sharp and ready.
So do you just strictly train like arm wrestling movements and stuff, or do you do deadlifts and squats and bench press? Like, do you incorporate those lifts?
I do. I would say, I think of it all as arm wrestling training, but yeah, I do a lot of traditional lifting. I would say my training is a lot like, probably very similar to Paul Lynn's. I'm a very football oriented person. That's what I grew up doing. So in the gym, that's kind of how I know how to hit it, with a football mentality. I train full body. I had an injury, a back injury my senior year at the Citadel. I played college ball. So my legs, I don't really deadlift or squat too heavy. I use a lot of bands. I do a lot of mobility work, but I don't train my lower body as intensely as my upper body. I just kind of try to keep it balanced, but I definitely train full body, everything, and arm wrestling is it's not split up. It's all integrated, if that makes sense. Everything is through my hand and wrist. I train my hand every day, and it's kind of all just jumbled together.
So do you train strictly at home, or do you go to a gym?
No, actually, I have a gym at my house. I've got an 800 square foot work garage in the back. It's very similar to your setup. It's great. And I haven't had to, no, I don't go anywhere. I just train strictly at home.
Perfect.
Twice a day.
Twice a day. So what time do you get your morning session in?
It depends on if I have to go into work. I telework sometimes. It could be as early as 4:30. Sometimes 5 o'clock, 5:30. If I'm training in the morning, I don't train every morning. I probably train 4 mornings out of the week. And I hit afternoon sessions. I think I hit 5, and then 1 is a practice. So, I do have 1 day off. I actually do yoga on that day now. That's my mobility yoga days. Try to keep my flexibility in check. But yeah, that's usually what it looks like.
How long have you been doing yoga for?
I actually just started.
Okay.
I want to say mid-February. Yeah, mid-February.
Have you noticed a big difference?
Yes, a big difference. I would recommend it, highly recommend it. I had issues, like I said, I had a pretty bad back injury a while ago, and my flexibility was just never really there, and I think that had a lot to do with it. Musculature imbalances. I was seeing chiropractors, and I knew I needed to take control while I was still young, and so it was totally outside of my comfort zone, because that's not something that I was ever thought I would do.
No, dude,
right?
it's funny you're telling me this, because I've been like you. I have a back injury. I have like a herniated disc in my L4 and 5, and it causes a lot of a pain on my femoral nerve, which is in the front of your leg. And mostly like people get that sciatica, but it really hurts a lot. And I think it's a lot to do with mobility and flexibility. And I've been researching yoga for the last couple of years, but it's been one of those things where I'm so unflexible anyway, that just now paying attention to more stretching and mobility work, I feel my back getting a little bit better. And then I kind of looked at like a few poses that you can do, the yoga poses or whatever, and that would help out the lower back and flexibility. So it's interesting. And I noticed too, like I just saw on your story that you were doing some kind of core work where you're doing the twist with the bands, explosive. And a lot of people don't realize how important that is.
No, they don't. It's very underrated. I'm not really I'm trying to be better at social media and promote more and put more of my stuff out there. But I see a lot of people in a lot of groups posting training, and everybody's always, who can partial curl the most, who can most side pressure, this and that. And it's like, guys, it's in my opinion, it's just not the best way to train. I mean, that stuff is good, but a lot of people, the knowledge is just not there out in the arm wrestling community about how to train, how to properly just get strong. Arm wrestling is a full body movement. That's, we all know that. You have to be able to, from your fingertips to your hips, through your shoulder, into the tips of your toes, need to all be in check in one. A lot of people don't, maybe not, it's not they don't understand it, but they're not aware of it, and they don't incorporate that in their training. So,
and also more guys like you need to have like YouTube channels where you can post videos. And I'm glad you're doing that in your story. And I know it takes time and work to do it. And you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's not your passion to put stuff out there, but you're really helping others because you have a great knowledge, like a Paul Lynn. I was talking to Robbie a couple nights ago, and we were talking about you because you guys have gone back and forth.
I saw that.
So, and it's just interesting where, he has kind of a laborious job. And then when you look at guys that come from like the background of football and the training, and all those aspects, I think that kind of rolls over really well with arm wrestling, as you can tell by how successful you've been, Paul, those types of guys that have transitioned with that type of background. Would you agree with that? Do you think that having that football training, that mentality is something that's a plus for you?
Absolutely. That's where the base pyramids, of my training come from. That's all I know. And it's worked for me. It works for a lot of guys. I think it's solid because, football, like many other, popular sports, is it's an all-around type of sport. You have to be strong everywhere. You have to be fast, explosive, big, strong. It's just, it's not a specific, area. Like, you know what I mean? It's an athletic, you have to be an athlete. So you train everywhere. It gives a good base, and then the knowledge is there too, especially if you played at the next level, college ball, or maybe you were at a really good high school program and you got experience there. It carries with you for the rest of your life.
Do you incorporate like any kind of cardiovascular work, like sled drags or any kind of like stuff like that, where you're kind of doing explosive kind of cardio?
Sometimes it's funny you said that because I did this week. I pulled out the sled for the first time in a while. But minimal. A lot of my cardiovascular work comes from the intensity of my sessions. Everything I do, I superset everything. I mean, there's hardly ever am I just doing one exercise. I'm always, maybe that's the highlight, and I start with like a bench tier or a compound movement where I'm just focusing on that. But everything's paired together. And even when I do those big movements, there's a small auxiliary movement that's maybe more so for just stretching and posture that's added with that. And then there's always big circuits where 3 exercises, 4, and I would say from just the intensity of that alone, hitting through those as hard as fast as you can, with 45 seconds to a minute break. I mean, that's where my stamina comes from, and if cardiovascular, I don't train like for stamina. I don't do that. I train as hard and as fast and as crisp as I can. And that's where, and everything else sort of comes into play.
Yeah, that makes sense, because I think like arm wrestling is such a endurance sport where you are going to be tired and fatigued when you, after a match or two, depending on how long, but still, and then you want to be stronger the longest basically, and kind of doing that circuit thing seems to be very successful. I mean, we've seen Michael Todd use that approach for many years. And I think a lot of people, like you said, like I have that kind of philosophy, like once I do my compound heavy movement or whatever, then, if I'm doing arm wrestling stuff like side pressure, I'll might, throw in side pressure and then wrist or hand or whatever, and just try to like exhaust that whole area that I'm training. Do you do a lot of holds and stuff for your training? Because I noticed like you're kind of like, you're not a, like you have a good lock. When we pulled, I noticed that, you have a really good hold, but you are really, you work on having great positioning in those times also too, while people might not see it as well. But when you're pulling, you can tell where you're, moving and getting set, and all of a sudden, because I laughed because Brandon was like, he can't pin you. And I'm like, I think it's coming. And then that side pressure. But, you can feel all that movements going on, so it's just interesting. So do you do statics and stuff? Or you just like in practice, do you guys train being like, being strong in those positions?
Short answer, no.
Okay.
No. I mean, I think statics is it's a hard thing to train, and a lot of people don't really know how to train it. If you do a true static movement, it's kind of takes some time and thought to set up the exercise to make it truly a static. And I think Todd Hutchins kind of went over that. And I mean, I've seen him talk about it. A lot of people, I mean, just a good example would be, I'm going to train static holds today, and they take a dumbbell and they hold it at 90. And it's like, is that really just a really slow negative, or is that a static, and are you training a bat? So I don't really train that. I have in the past, haven't put a whole lot of attention to it. I probably would look more into it in more of my off season when I have a lot of time to just experiment. But no, I don't. In practice, we don't really, every practice rep is a ready go. Every single one. I mean, maybe at the end of practice, we'll say, all right, we're going to get in the straps and top roll, or we're going to work a certain thing. But at Carolina Chaos, every practice rep is a ready go. A lot of people would, disagree with that, but
so you're having matches, basically. You're having matches every practice.
Yep. And now and they're not flashes. Most of those, I mean, we're grinding, it's a ready go, and then go from there. And our philosophy is, if you want a slow pull, well, stop the match.
Yes, that's
we
good. And that makes a lot of sense.
Right. And we're fortunate to where we have enough guys with different skill levels to where, everybody can get work. It's not like somebody's always getting flashed and, they're not capable of stopping a match and getting work. We have different skill. We have skill level from, 150 pounds all the way up to 300 plus pounds and guys at different, you
Yeah,
know.
you're not smashing the rookie that's coming in for the first practice.
No, we won't, you know, we use our heads too. I mean, when I say every match is ready to go, that's true, but you know, we also don't, you know, we know the difference between, you know, practice and, you know, quality repetitions versus just, you know, destroying somebody, you know, so it's, but yeah.
How did you get involved in arm wrestling? I mean, how did you like transition from like football? You went to college. I mean, how did you
Yeah.
get involved?
Well, that's a, so it would have been my senior year of high school, 2014, probably December, November-ish. I was just getting done with my senior season. And I mean, football was everything, you know, and I wasn't sure at that time if I was going to play at the next level. And there was a show on TV on AMC, Game of Arms. And I was like, wow, that's pretty freaking cool. So I remember just looking up, you know, I mean, arm wrestling tournaments. And at that time, that's when WAL was kind of doing their tournament series. And I found a qualifier near me and went. It was in Erie, or no, not Erie, sorry, Titusville, Pennsylvania. It was kind of a smaller qualifier, but you know, I won the 220 amateur class right-handed. I didn't complete left. And, you know, of course, I don't think it mattered, amateur or pro. If you won, you got invited to Vegas. And it was in May. And my dad was like, you know, that'd be a good senior trip, you know, go to Vegas, pull an arm wrestling tournament, right? And he took me and a couple buddies out there. And then I saw, you know, what arm wrestling really, how big the sport really is, what it's all about. I mean, 800 people at a tournament. It was like, oh my gosh. And I mean, I got smashed. I did win a match. I don't know who it was against, but I did win one match. And then I said, you know what? I want to be back here someday. And, you know, and then I went to college and played ball, and I went to a military school. So it kind of was on the back burner, but I still trained for it. I had some weird setups in my apartment. I tried to do like a tournament a year. And then after college, that's when it became full time.
And then when did you get hooked up with like Chad and those guys?
That wasn't until September of 2019.
Okay.
Because I didn't, you know, I knew there were a couple practices that summer. I had a big match with Casey Coley at Pull of the Mountains, Joe Rogers tournament in Georgia. And there were a few big Carolina practices that I hit. And that's kind of where I met with those guys. And they were like, you know, you should come, you know, to a practice. And it's kind of far for me. It's almost 3 hours. It's like 2 hours and 45 minutes. Yeah. And
you do that?
But I went one Sunday. What's that?
You do that once a week? You drive out there with those guys?
Yeah, I do. When I went the first time and I saw the talent level, the intensity level, the practice, I mean, it was unlike any practice I'd ever been to before. And I said, you know what? If I want to be great at this sport, this is the crew I need to be with right here. And it's the best decision I've ever made in my life or in my arm wrestling career. You know, I mean, those guys are ride or die with me, and you know, I am with them too. And it's a great group of guys up there. It really is.
Yeah, for sure, man. It was like, you know, I was paying attention a little bit more, and I saw like the teamwork, you know, just the teamwork and just like the support system, you know what I mean? Like everybody was happy for each other. And, you know, because I missed the last time, you know, I think it was like the King of Florida where Chad won and you were there too, I think, but I ended up missing that tournament. It's kind of a clusterfuck kind of tournament. It was like a little bit, but you know, that's how Florida arm wrestling can be sometimes. It's like the backyard.
Oh, sure.
So,
hey, nothing wrong with it. We enjoy it.
No, that's right. So, so you had your match with Casey Cole. How did that one go?
I won. He won the first round, and then I beat him the next three. But he was a strong Casey Cole. I mean, he was out of the sport for a little while, if I remember.
Yep.
But he used to compete, I want to say 240s or heavy, maybe even heavyweight.
Yes.
And then he was out of the sport for like 2 years or so. And I think he had an injury. He had like constructive surgery on his shoulder, but then he lost a bunch of weight and looked very good at 200 pounds that day. Just shredded, looked like he belonged in that class. And he was extremely tough opponent to handle. But yeah, I ended up pulling that win out 3-1.
That's a really big win, especially early in your career. I just saw Casey at the Alabama States, and he's like, him and his wife competed, and he's like just pulling once a year at this tournament because it's down the street from his house. And but he's
Right.
a always a top tier guy always. And back then too, like he was like pulling a lot more than he has been lately. So I mean that's a big win. So that boosted your confidence, and then were you just more focused on, like, are you more of a tournament type of puller, or do you like super matches? What do you prefer?
I like a mix of both, honestly. Um, super matches are fun, and it definitely makes me train. It's definitely easier for me to train for super matches because I can study somebody, I can see what I need to train for and who I need to prepare for, and it makes it a lot easier. And in my opinion, it's a lot harder for someone to beat me 3 times, than it is once in the tournament. So, I, super matches definitely favor me, but I like tournaments. Tournaments are exciting. I mean, especially when you have a big class, over 10 entries, sometimes 20 entries, and it's like, okay, this is, that they're exciting to me, and I love to pull tournaments. So a good mix of both. I mean, I prefer a mix of both, but I think super matches, I definitely perform better in super matches than tournaments.
And you're a guy that likes to pull multiple classes or up a class.
Yeah, lately, just because a lot of the tournaments I go to are more local, and sometimes at 200 pounds there just isn't a whole lot of competition. So I'll either pull up or pull multiple classes, and that's what I really like about tournaments. I'm using tournaments now more for like practice and better competition. So that's why you saw me pull like 220s in supers at in Florida.
Mhm.
And that's what I've been doing more recently, and probably what I will do. Hardly do I probably will never, I can't say never, but it's going to take a big tournament for me to cut down to my competing weight for. It's I like to go into tournaments heavy
What
and
is
just pull
that?
the heavier
What would that be, like 200?
Yeah, either I'm 198 is,
Yeah.
that would be hard for me, but I could still make 98s. 205
Mhm.
is another one I'd
What do you
probably have
walk
to,
around at?
about 210.
Now, do you follow like a good nutrition regimen? You watch watch what you eat?
Absolutely. I'm actually looking at my sheet right now. It's over there. Yeah, I'm pretty strict about, the macros,
Mhm.
all that. And I mean, right now I'm kind of sustaining / putting on weight. So it hasn't been as strict, but yeah, I eat like I call it the dog diet. Dogs eat the same thing, the same amount, the same time every day. And that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, no,
You know,
that's you eat for recovery, really. It's just like a
I
repetitive
eat to
thing.
get big and strong. I eat to fuel my body. I don't care what it tastes like. It's just what I do.
Now, how do you stay so disciplined? Do you think the military background, what, like, did you have this kind of focus as a kid? Like,
Yeah, I mean, fitness has been instilled in me from a very, very young age. I mean, I can't remember how old I was when my dad was making me do push-ups and pull-ups because I was getting beat up at the playground, and that was his solution to make me tougher, And then and I hated it at first, but then I mean, 12 to 13 years old, I got hooked, and I've been working out ever since. And I got into the food part too, and yeah, definitely the military background helps, but it's truly because I love it. I mean, that's what a lot of people have to have other people keep them in check, or, go to the gym to get motivation, or some people, a lot of people take pre-workout so they get pumped. But for
mhm.
me, it just, I love it. I love every part of it. I love the nutrition. I love the working out. I love the pain, the sweat, tears, it's all the process is very satisfying for me. So I guess it makes it easy because I'm wired that way, you know.
Do you think it's because your dad set a good example with fitness and stuff? Did he take it serious
Absolutely.
too? Was he,
Well, it's funny because, you know, my dad, I mean, I hear stories about how he worked out like an animal in high school and college and all that, but you know, he's a cardiologist now, and he doesn't, you know, he works out, but he's not like, you know,
fit?
crazy.
He's
I
just a
wouldn't say
fit
he's as
guy.
into his
Yeah.
own, but yeah, he definitely taught me, you know, along with fitness, a lot of other, you know, life lessons like that at a very young age that have obviously stuck, you know, for
Mhm.
to this day. So yeah,
It's
I'm
good to
pretty
have
thankful for that.
also good to have a cardiologist in the family, man. That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah, if my heart ever goes bad,
Yeah,
he
I
just,
mean,
you know,
you just keep
any,
you focused.
right. Yeah.
What do you do for like work? Do you do like any kind of is it strenuous physically?
No, not really. I mean, I'm an engineer.
Okay.
And I'm an engineer for the Navy. So I do, sometimes I'm doing some, you know, I'm not always sitting behind a computer. It's
Mhm.
kind of half and half. I'll work in a machine shop and, you know, do stuff there, but it's never truly strenuous labor, you know, and that's what allows me to train twice a day.
Mhm.
And I'd rather have, I mean, a lot of guys, you know, have labor jobs like Robbie, and they're
Yes.
super strong. Those guys are always just very hard to
But
handle.
then you're the other example of the spectrum. Like it's so crazy how arm wrestling works because there's no template. People that say they have the answer, they probably have it for themselves, but it doesn't always work. Like your training might not work for
No,
me, vice versa. Like, you know what I mean? Like you just,
no.
it's so crazy because, you know, when I was talking to Robbie, we were like kind of mentioning about his job and stuff. And then we are thinking, well, maybe Adam's like, you know, out there with a friggin' pitchfork all day or something.
Yeah,
So, but the
yeah,
training
you're
thing,
so
you
right.
train with having a gym though, you get to train your hand. Like on the weekends, you could go in there 5 times a day or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's all kinds
I
of
mean,
shit. Like if you're anything like me, like I'm always messing around when I have extra time just to kind of like, you know,
yeah,
just to pretend
sure.
arm wrestling, you know?
No, you're so right about, you know, the whole template thing, and you know, everybody's different because so many people have, you know, hit me up on, you know, social media, whatever, and ask for advice and, you know, training and all that. And I say, you know, I mean, I can't really, I mean, this is what I do, but it may not work for you. And that's okay. You know, not everybody is different, and you know, and you really just need to find what works for you. And it takes time. You know, you're not going to figure out in a week, a month. You know, it may not be for a couple of years. Heck, I'm still figuring it out, you know. So
And how you've been pulling what, 7 years?
yeah, 7 years, a little over.
How old are you?
25.
25, man. You're such a baby. It's so awesome. It's like incredible. Like, and it's so incredible because it's like I was talking almost every show I talk about like this young generation of arm wrestlers that are coming up. Like it's so insane, like the talent, like you, Robbie, Noel, and like all these great 200 pounders like Dan Mosier and
Right.
then you got like, you know, Chance and Corey and all the young guys coming up. It's really Paul Lynn. I mean, it's just interesting seeing all these young guys kind of taking over the sport. It's really interesting. And you know, you having a like a mentor like Chad Silvers, where he's been in such like
Yeah.
amazing events and competing at that highest level that you can possibly compete at. And you know, going through the adversity he's had to go through in life and just being a true champion.
Right.
I mean, that's got to be inspiring to be around also. But like you say you love training, but is there times in the morning like you wake up, your alarm goes off, it's 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's time to go train? Are you always like ready to rumble as soon as you wake up?
Craig, there's been a lot of days where I want to hit that snooze button, and there's
Okay.
days where I haven't. And it's, you know, I mean, but you know, it's the days that I don't wake up
Mhm.
and I sleep in. And yeah, you get that 30 minutes, hour of satisfaction. But then eventually you do wake up. You're in the shower, you go do work, and you feel like dog shit because you didn't wake up and you didn't do it. And it's that feeling that I always try to keep in my head and remember. So the next day, when the alarm goes off and I'm tired, or I didn't get enough sleep the night before, whatever, it's that feeling that motivates me to get out of that bed and get it done, because you know you're going to regret it, you know.
No, it's so crazy because I feel the exact same way, because it's,
Mhm.
for me, it's always about like, I love the training, don't get me wrong, but like, you know, in the morning, it's really challenging. And then once you get started, it's amazing. But because you just raise your frequency level in the morning time and you're just ready to kind of take on the world. And then when you don't do that, you know, your conscience is just constantly, what the fuck, you're a pussy. Like, then you think,
Yeah,
oh man, if you lose a match or something, you're like, I could have did those 5 workouts that I missed. Or
right, right,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's a great mentality to have. And people like they, you know, like I get it all the time, like, oh man, you train all the time, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, but it's the challenge of getting up and doing that stuff. And I post that stuff just so that maybe that motivates someone else, that anybody can get up and do it. I'm 50, you can get up and do it. It does, no
Yeah,
excuses. But when you have too many of those days in a row where you miss and you kind of live that kind of life of regret, because you're like, ah, fuck it, what's another day? And I'll tell you, man, like when I used to take a few, like 10 or 11 days off before a tournament, I would start getting real lazy. I mean, that definitely wasn't good for me at all. Like, I definitely can't take time off like that. It just, you can get into
right.
a rut too, you know, even though you think you're resting. But, you know, I think with arm wrestling, there's a lot of trial and error that you have to do with yourself and kind of take data. And is that something that you do? Do you keep track of stuff? Do you write down your workouts?
Yeah. I used to be really bad about it because I just kept everything up here, and
Mhm.
I would always write them down. Hardly do I ever not write down a workout, but it would just be on a piece of paper and it get thrown away. Now I actually have a book where I kind of log this stuff, different training blocks for, you know, different purposes. And that really helps because I could go back and look at, you know, weight, sets, reps for stuff that, you know, if I revisit an exercise that I haven't done in, you know, a couple months, I have a baseline. So that helps out a lot. And yeah, I think everybody should do that too. I mean, get you a notebook, write it down, be detailed, you know. And you can write that stuff down before you don't have to be doing it during your workout. You know, write out your workout. So all you have to do is record your weight, or even if it's just your last set, you know, or whatever.
No, you're right.
You know,
Absolutely. 100%.
definitely keep a log. It helps.
Yeah, no, that's one thing I used to do when I was bodybuilding. I'd write down all my workouts and eating and stuff, because you have to keep track of, you know, 'cause especially with nutrition. But then like when I
Right.
started arm wrestling, I kind of took the fun out of training, you know, and then I started kind of experiment with more of the conjugate method, where you got to write down your weights. And like you said, when you go
Yeah.
revisit a exercise, if you're getting weaker in that exercise, then there's something wrong with your program, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's like one of those things where you can fix it right away. It's real interesting when you keep track of stuff. But I think you're a good example of, when you take the sport seriously at a young age, you have to leave no guesswork, you know?
Yeah, you definitely have to be disciplined. You got to write, you know, write down everything. Um, know what you're doing, have a plan, have a purpose, you know, achieve a goal, and go into the gym with a mission. You know, that's, you live by that stuff and you'll be okay.
So have you always lived a like clean, healthy lifestyle? Like, you don't seem to be the party type of guy going out late nights and stuff. Like, now that you're set kind of in a goal. I mean, I know we're all young and do crazy stuff in
Yeah.
college and stuff, but are you more of a kind of a disciplined guy, like that kind of, you know, you've watched yourself in that kind of aspect of things?
Yeah, I mean, I'm, don't get me wrong, I like to have fun, but you know, I kind of live by the work hard, play hard
Yes.
mentality a little bit. And I would say definitely more on the work hard kind of thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, you know, enjoying yourself on a Friday or Saturday night. You know, you got to take some time to enjoy yourself. But yeah, I live pretty strict and by the book. That's just
And
what works for me.
but you do that too because you don't want anything to affect your training, right? The next day, like, is it worth you going out late at night and being hungover the next day and affect your training, unless you're planning to take a day off
Yeah.
or whatever?
I mean, like, here's how I look at it. I tell myself, Adam, look, you can go out. You want to have a couple beers. You want to get, you know, a little drunk and go home and and stay out till 2 in the morning. That's fine. But you got to show up to work the next day. There's no, oh, I got drunk, or I'm hungover, or I didn't get in till 4 a.m. There's none of that. It's, it's okay to have fun. You can do really whatever you want to do, but you have to show up to work. That's about, and if you're miserable, you're miserable, but
and you're 20 and you're 25 and you can get away with it, because I know when I'm at my age at 50, if I sniff a beer cap, I'm like down for a couple of days. It's like,
well, I'm already starting to feel a little bit of a difference. I can't, you know what I mean? It's, I don't know. I definitely don't go as crazy as I used to, but yeah.
Have you suffered any injuries from arm wrestling at all?
I will say nothing major. I thought a year ago that I had a bad bicep injury because I did something. I was actually in practice, and I was, believe it, I used to never have a top roll, and I really still don't. But I was so disciplined to get in a top roll. It's like all I practiced. And one practice, I was just doing a lot of back pressure, and the long head of my bicep, really my brachialis, it was more sore than usual that night, and it just didn't feel right. And it was, it hurt I couldn't even put 10 pounds of pressure in that hammer curl position. Like, just couldn't do. Now, if I turned my palm and, regular, that was fine. I thought that I had partially tore it to some degree, and it's funny because I actually pulled a tournament with it in January. It was in December when I hurt it. And I pulled a tournament in January. I kind of took some time off of it, pulled again over summer, and it took almost a year to get right to where, but I think it was just a bad strain. And then of course, I went through, as a newbie, I forget what year it was. Actually it was 2017. It was Noel Nunez in an after pull. And when my elbow first popped, when you get that first elbow pop and your side pressure's gone for about 3 months, he popped my cherry in an after pull. But other than those two,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Other than those two, nothing, I haven't had any tears or arm breaks. No, just, bad strains from good matches. That's about it.
What's been your biggest win so far?
Biggest win.
Like for you, even if it was someone that you might have been like, hey, this guy's gonna be at the tournament, and you were able to beat that person.
Honestly, I would say Robbie Russell.
Okay.
It's got to be. I have to really look back, but he is. The match that we had in August of 2020 was the hardest arm wrestling match I've ever been in. I've been beat plenty of times, but I'd say the hardest match I've ever won, that match for sure.
Yeah, no, he said the same thing. It was a battle, man. I remember watching that match, and it was like, it was just a crazy battle.
Yeah.
You talk about like losing matches. How do you deal with that? Like, how do you shake that off and just keep yourself motivated? Do you get discouraged at all?
No, I actually need to be real careful when I lose, because when I lose, I tend to overtrain a lot. I tend to get very frustrated. I go into the gym and I do way more. I need to be careful about losing. That's actually how I hurt my bicep. I was overtraining. After Mississippi State, when I took a loss to, Dan Mosier and Dallas Langston, I was like, man, and I was overtraining and I hurt my arm. I try to, see where the weaknesses were, what I could have improved, what needed to be better in order to win, and, go from there and get to the drawing board and, do what I do best, train for that, or just get better where I need to, you just have to learn from it.
And those guys are respectfully. I just pulled Dan Mosier and he freaking trashed me. It's like he trashes everybody. And it's one of those things where I don't even know how do you even train for someone like that? It's so crazy.
I've put a lot of thought in that. It baffles me because with that kind of speed and explosion, and I think a lot of people misunderstand Dan Mosier a lot. I think everybody just says that he's just fast. And that's not true. He's powerful.
Yes.
He's powerful. And what in power is strength times speed. And that's what he has,
No, I picked his brain and we kind of discussed a little bit of training. He does a lot of different angle hits really fast with bands and stuff. I mean, he's adapted a training system where he trains that. And yeah, like I've watched him do that to everybody. And when I got an opportunity to pull him, but like in my head, I'm thinking, man, it looks so fake. These guys must be tired or something. But then, having it done to me 3 times in an event, I was like, man, this guy is just fucking strong in that move. Like it's really crazy. And then you see him losing overseas. It's just like, holy fuck, that guy. And it's like, it's just crazy, the talent, level and stuff.
Right. Yeah. He's hard to train for. I mean, I feel like you just have to either be so much stronger than him, which is, that's hard to do, or just, I don't know. I mean, it's
tricky,
or speed. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to go about it, but he has something special and he definitely works very hard for it and deserves it. And I look forward to trying to pull him again someday.
Yeah, me too. It's interesting. No, it's really interesting. And then kind of when you get like, once you have that anyway, it kind of takes the fear out of it. Cause honestly, I didn't want to blow my shit apart. Like it's like,
right. I mean, it's a confidence thing too. Cause it's like,
dude,
I mean, with that kind of explosion of speed, it's dangerous to jump in there. You got to be ready to, you better have some confidence in your arm and in your training to be able to jump in and, either try to catch that or match that or whatever your plane of attack is. You got to be, that's a hard hit.
Yes. Now, do you have any matches that you have coming up? Anything you're focused on? Any tournaments that you have coming up in the future?
I actually have a big match with Brent Rockers in Arizona, April 23rd. Part of Tim Talmadge's card and Arizona State's. He's running a really cool pay-per-view event after the tournament, and I would recommend everybody to jump on that watch because it's a big card.
That's
a lot of good matches.
April 23rd, you said?
April 23rd, yes, Tucson, Arizona, or at least that's the airport I'm flying into. Can't be too far.
Nice.
But yeah, there's a lot of good matches on that card. And Brent is somebody who's ranked above me. I think he's 5 and I'm 7 in the hook rankings. And then I forget what it is in the US, but he's a tough opponent and I look forward to facing him in April.
You've never pulled him before?
I have, not in a super match. I've seen him twice in tournaments, once in January of last year. That was the tournament I went to after I hurt my bicep, and we had he's beaten me what looks to seem pretty convincingly. I mean, the matches didn't last long. I felt that I had angles and I made some mistakes, and he beat me again at Worlds. But I'll definitely have a lot more for him.
Nice.
Another month for sure.
Do you think it's a big advantage pulling someone before and knowing kind of what to expect, and then you can train for that kind of matchup?
Yeah, I do. I mean, personally, for me, I know that can be sort of not advantageous for others, but for me, I feel like it is.
Now, do you study film and stuff? Is that part of your training as you get closer to like matches? Do like your team, do they kind of mimic some of the stuff that you might be expecting from Brett? Yeah,
I mean, they Chad has a long history with Brent, so he's been a good source, but
lots of intel.
Right. So yeah, but no, for any match, I study a lot of film. Whatever's out there, I try to find, and again, attacking your opponent's weaknesses. I can always go back to my bread and butter, but I always want to train to attack my opponent's weakness.
It's funny, you saying, with Chad knowing, having history, it's like, just made me realize how much of an advantage it is for you, because like he's had like so much intel on so many guys in your guys' weight kind of class, you know, like
Right.
been pulling for so many years. He's almost pulled everybody, you know, so it's good to have that kind of, and of course people evolve and get different, but I mean, you know, guys that have been in the sport, you know, like as long as, you know, Brett has, I mean, you see what, you know, they're good at and basically what their bread and butter is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Brent doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses, if any at all. You know, he's very solid everywhere. But yeah, Chad is he's kind of one of those invaluable coaches. You know, he's just so knowledgeable. He's done so much for me and other young guys on the team. You know, we wouldn't be anywhere without him, you know, so we're thankful.
So when you're planning out like events for the year, do you have like an event that you want to peak for? And then like you said, a lot of these other tournaments you might do as a, you know, as a practice, just to be in that kind of mindset of competition, the ready goes, different refs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you can get better at. I'm
I
like
mean,
after the, go ahead.
okay, so yeah, so
I was just
sort
going
of,
to say, after the Brett match, you have anything that you really want to put effort into after that?
no, he's kind of the big shebang, for better lack of terms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after that, I will probably take a few months off of just events in general and just kind of go through another training phase. And then come August, you know, PAF finals is always a big one for me, especially because this year it's right in my hometown. So
Okay.
that'll be an event that I go to. I don't have a super match scheduled. I have in the past. I've always had a belt match, but I don't know if there's anyone that's going to take it this year. You know, so I'll probably just pull the tournament, and then usually towards the end of the year, like the October to December timeframe, I hit some big tournaments. So I have not planned or thought about which events I'll go to, because you know the only thing that's been on my mind is the April
Yes.
match.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I think I saw you. I met you at a Daytona match for like Bike Week one time. You were down there, weren't you?
Yeah. I used to go to those a lot. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, because I think Brandon Morris and you guys had a couple matches maybe at that tournament.
Yeah. We were it was that triple elimination, and
Yes.
we saw each other a few times. Yeah.
Brutal matchups.
Right.
So do you train your left as much as your right, like when you're focused on your training? Is it a balance act?
Yeah. So it's funny because I mean, if you've ever saw or if I've ever showed you, most people know that my right hand is like twice the size of my left, and my forearm too. And I was just born that way. My right hand was born much thicker and wider than my left hand. I train them the same. Now, a lot of exercises, you know, especially hand and wrist stuff, my right can do is 30 to 40% stronger, and I don't hold it back, but I try to keep it the same. And I've even injured this hand a couple times. I guess you were asking about injuries earlier. I totally forgot that in football, like my pinky tendon right here, it actually was severed in half and it had to have surgery to go back together. And it was like a 16-week period of nothing. And I did nothing but train this hand, and it never caught up. And then years ago, I broke this hand too. And same thing. I just, you know, I wasn't arm wrestling then, but I was training the left side of my body, and it never caught up. But
so that was to your right hand you broke?
yeah, I broke it. Probably was 15 years old, 14 or 15 years old. I broke it. And then in 2017, I severed this tendon and it split. I had to have a pretty weird, extensive surgery to have that repaired and to where it was functional again. But yeah.
So what's your goal, man? Like what do you want to accomplish in the sport? Like how far do you want to take this?
So, I mean, it's funny you ask, because I've never really thought about like an overall, like where I want to be someday, because I think a lot of people make goals like that, and you know, I don't know, it's just it's too unrealistic of a goal to look at in the overall. I just take things day by day. You know, I mean, yes, the goal is to be, number one, everywhere in the world, but, I don't wake up every day and say, I'm going to be number one in 5 years or in 10 years. It's always the next match, the next set, the next rep. That's the most important one. My mentality is, in order to win, you got to think about what's important now. That's what that stands for. And that's, I won't take credit for that. That's Lou Holtz that said that. But
no, that's good. Yeah. Because little micro goals, and then you get to the major,
right.
It's hard to
Yeah.
it's hard to say, oh yeah, 10 years I'm going to be a world champion. And then it's like,
Yeah, I mean, that's just not you can't think like that, because I mean, yeah, sure, that can be your overall goal, but
yes,
that can't be what you look at day to day. It's got to be, you can't look at the top of the staircase. You got to look at the next step, because that's the most important one,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you're always going to have that moments where you're motivated by, you're being successful and beating some top guys. And you're like, hey man, I'm getting closer to my goal, but hey, next week I want to set a PR over here or whatever. It's like, now, do you lift heavy and do PRs and keep track of are you what kind of rep range do you work?
It depends. I don't do a lot of heavy training, truly because of just the nature of how I train. I mean, I train alone. So for me to do, 1 rep max on a bench press is kind of hard to do, or a row. Now there's times where when I have a long training block, I'll go through maybe a strength phase where I am training that 1 to 3 rep range on compound lifts. Okay. But with hand and wrist stuff, I don't like to train heavy. I don't find it's beneficial, because especially, I mean, I practice hard once a week. That is my 1 rep max training.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah.
I don't need to sit there. I think, and plus with those smaller muscle groups, the hand and wrist, I mean, I like that 20 to 30 rep range. That's where I'm at. Tons and tons of reps. That's what builds those tendons, those ligaments. I mean, a lot of people, I know Todd Hutchins has that 1 rep max style of side pressure and all that, but you practice like I do, and I'd like to see someone do that.
Yeah. And I think too, like you said, with smaller muscle groups, like your hand and stuff, like a lot of people ask me that, like, what do you do, train heavy? And I'm like, to be honest with you, like nothing like under 10 reps when I'm doing stuff. And like you said, it's try to keep things higher. Because I feel like you can injure your hand easy. I think.
Easy, especially with like pronation, things where you're turning.
Yes.
You don't want to go heavy on that stuff. A lot of people are doing all that like over the thumb strap. Oh, I lifted, 100 pounds off the floor. Like, who cares? And then how do you perform on the table? Like, it never shows. So I don't know why you do all that. You should probably focus on the movement and hit more reps and hit a deeper rotation. I mean, the only thing that I'll go heavy on sometimes is, like a backstop wrist curl, where maybe I got my wrist over a bench and I'm on the cable machine, and it's safe to where it's kind of not pulling me back on my bone, but it's opening my hand. And then I'll try as hard as I can to bring it back, and when I say heavy, I'm talking 10 reps. That's heavy for hand and wrist for me. Maybe 8 or 5. I mean, I've never done anything less than 5 reps.
I think with Hutchings too, is like he's conditioned himself so much for that type of training. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like he's used to all that elbow strain and stuff. So like, I feel like new guys that, cause I incorporate some side pressure max effort, but it's like, you gotta be, I feel like maybe more 3 to 5 reps and just kind of keeping track of that more than just like, I feel like it's hit or miss with injuring yourself,
Yeah, I don't do any of that side pressure. It's hard for training. I think a lot of people get carried away, and they, I mean, there's really no right way to do it, but when you're sitting there and you're opening up and things they don't look pretty. I mean, why are you training like that? Lighten up the weight and keep everything right here and stay connected, and a lot of people are ego, and they see somebody else on the internet lifting
I know.
100 pounds and they can only lift 60 and that bothers them. So how can I lift 100? You know, they try to make it, rig it up. It's like,
Dude, it's so true. We live in that time, brother. We live in that time. It's so true. Because you will see that someone like all of a sudden a strict curl video and then 20 friggin' strict
Right.
curl videos, or like back in the day, it was always the table curl. And I'm like, holy shit, dude. Like, how these guys
know.
have any elbows left, you know, with a
After you, I know. I mean, a lot
200
of
pound
people,
dumbbell or whatever. And I'm like, whatever.
like,
But
I mean, I can tell you right now, people put up videos of certain lifts, and I mean, like biceps is a good example. Everybody's doing their whatever curl variation that's popular that week. I mean, I could not match it to any. I mean, some of these people are putting up like 100-pound dumbbell curl partial.
I feel
tell you,
weak. I feel weak
100
watching these
right.
people's videos, dude. It's like, I'm like, I even made a comment in one of my workout videos the other day. I was like, I am weak as shit in this fucking this exercise right here, the shoulder press. Meanwhile, I just watched a video of someone doing 3 plates for reps, and I'm like, holy fuck. But you know what? Those people sometimes they're not even that good on the table. Like, it doesn't
No,
transition.
that's what I was just about to say. Like, people post these videos of their bicep strength, and you go to a tournament, and I mean, it's just not there. I mean, you know, people ask me sometimes, like, people have asked me, like, how much do you curl? Like, your bicep is so strong. And I'm like, honestly, not as much as you. That's all I answer with. I don't know. I mean, I could a 60-pound dumbbell would give me a lot of trouble on a strict curl. I can tell you right now, I probably could not strict curl a 70-pound dumbbell. Probably couldn't do it.
I'm with you, dude. I'm in the same boat. Like, I'm in the same boat. That's why I never like, I always kind of edit my videos to make them faster, and to like, not, people ask me all the time, like, how much you lifting here? Like, not much, dude. Like, you know, I was doing something with side pressure, and I was like, I put a shit ton of side pressure weight on a certain movement that I was doing, but it didn't really translate to the table very well, because if you aren't getting in your setup, it doesn't even do you any good. So I think I needed to work on more like setup stuff, and just, you know, that having more of that ready go, you know what I mean? Like, just building that speed, you know. And but yeah, I think like we're in a day and age where people want to boost their ego with the lifts, and I think sometimes it's causing injuries. That's why I'm saying guys like you need to post videos out there, and then you can show how to do things a different way. Because I trained with Coach Ray for about 12 weeks online, and he had the same philosophy as you, you know, full range of motion on certain things, but even if you're doing half range, it's controlled. And he actually had me like do a lot of the lifts where I would put the weight back on the floor and then lift it again and put the weight, you know what I mean? Like, sort of like stopping the motion.
Right. Direction.
Because if you take momentum, you know, out of the lift, sometimes you're really able to isolate that group of muscles that you're trying to work. So
sure. You know, I think a good rule to follow, I think a lot of people need to hear this. And this is where football kind of comes into play for me. You know, when you look at a football player that's training in the weight room to be better at football, you know, when are you ever squatting on the field, or bench pressing, or shoulder pressing, or doing these exercises on the field? They're not football players, basketball players, they're not in the gym trying to mimic exactly what they're doing in their sport. They're training to get strong. And, you know, I think that's how arm wrestlers need to think too. You know, train to get strong, you know, the muscle groups that you're using, and then practice is where you put it together. You know, you don't need to sit there and try to rig up your table and get the best exact, you know. Train to be strong, train your muscle groups, put it together on the table, you know. And I think that's a pretty good rule to follow.
Oh man, I think that's a great philosophy. And I think with that, man, that's a great segue to end the show, man. And I really appreciate you coming on, brother. I mean, it's been awesome meeting you and hanging out a little bit. We kind of talked at Orlando, and it's funny because when I was thinking about doing a show with you, I was like, man, I felt like I did one with you, because I was picking your brain so much in Orlando. Like, it was like, because I'm just interested in people's mindset and just training, and you're young. it's really interesting to me when people are young and they have the level of discipline you have. It's really
Thank you.
fascinating. Really, it's a good. I think it's a good inspiration, and I think that's why your team kind of sees that too. You know, with the young guys like Hunter and those guys out there. You know, they just, you know, it's such a great camaraderie of guys helping each other. It's just really inspiring, and I wish you and all your guys the best of luck, man. And thanks a lot for kind of doing this. I know you're busy.
Oh, absolutely. No, thanks, Craig. I'm honored to be on the show. Glad we could spend time together, talk about it. It's been great. Thank you.
Thanks, brother.